Oh yeah, that one. Hi everyone. So basically the last panel covered most of my talk, but I have slides. And I also have tricks, and I gave them names, so there's that. I promise it's not as geeky as it looks like. Yeah, let's get into it. So for all of those who don't know me, which is probably 99% of you, my name is Alex. I spent like 10 years in product management, doing mainly B2B internal tools at early stage companies. The last 5 years I've been doing data space, various things. And while I was doing those things, I became self-taught data analyst, for better or worse. And one thing really struck me when I was doing my very first gigs as a data analyst, building reports, data models and stuff like that, is like product managers, they talk a lot on a daily basis with people. And I thought that if I'm going to be doing analytics, I'm just going to be not talking to people so much, and I'm just going to do, number crunching. Yeah, I was wrong. I was really surprised how much talking there is still in doing data analytics if you want to do the job right. And then it just, I started drawing similarities between data analysts and product managers, and also a lot of junior and mid-level analysts, they would ask me, like, how do I progress in my career? And like, do I learn Python or R next? And I would usually say, like, well, neither. Do a communication skills course and learn a product mindset, because that's gonna get you very far. That's what I want to talk about today, like the similarity between the product manager and data analyst, because if you really look closely, like the resemblance is uncanny. Right, so why should you care? Yeah, I got the laugh, that's good. Why should you care? So if you want to stop building and maintaining 1,467 dashboards that collect nothing but dust, that's reason number one. It's going to probably help you to know what's important, what's not important, which things I should focus on, and which things I can forget about. You're going to build stakeholders' trust, because you're actually going to start solving their problems, and they're going to trust you. And a lot of, one of the reasons that I also saw that data doesn't have adoption, because people don't trust the numbers. And it's like, no, well, this is the report, and it's like, actually, my numbers in my head are different, so, go to hell. And then, last but not least, it's gonna, allow you to turn from being reactive, so you mainly do what people ask you to do, to being proactive, and really, this is what the unicorn data analyst is, and you reach the level over 9,000, when you get that, and every single business stakeholder wants to hire you. And it really comes down to this. And if there is one thing that you're going to remember from that talk, I want you to be that sentence, because all the stuff I'm going to be talking about has also been talked about already, comes down to this quote, which is: a problem well stated is a problem half solved. It's been said by a very famous inventor, so he knows better than I do. I just stick to that, and that helps me a lot. What do PMs actually do? No one knows. I don't know 80% of the time what I'm doing, and I'm only half joking right now. But if you look really closely, PM's job is about the three things. You're either increasing the revenue, you're saving costs, or you're decreasing some business and some risks in the business and the processes, or whatever. And you do this by, trying to figure out what your team should build next. And then you go and build it. And you prioritize based on the ROI, ideally. And then when you know what should be done, you tune out all the noise, and you make sure that the team stays on the ball. Now, I'd argue that the analyst role is very similar. You're still trying to save money, increase the revenue, or de-risk certain processes. You just do it in a different way. And you do it by measuring the business processes, and then you're trying to find areas of focus, and where that should, where the business should focus on, where the product should focus on, whatever. So, how do you do that? And there are a lot of tricks in the product toolkit that you can use. No, they're not Scrum. Don't do that, by the way, please. And I'm going to talk about very basic stuff. A lot of stuff has been said already in the panel, so I'm just going to try and hammer it home. They're not new, they're not revolutionary, they're not sexy. Some of you will find them boring or super obvious, but we very, very often just glance over them, forget about them, myself included, and they should be part of the job. And these things are, you need to understand the business, you need to talk to your customers very often, and yes, as data analysts or data scientists or whatever business-facing data role you're in, you do have customers, they're just internal. Yeah, I'm going to use the word customer and stakeholder interchangeably, by the way. And then you need to know how to say no. And that's difficult, it's an art on its own. And then there's one little component that I'm going to talk about at the end. It doesn't matter now. So let's focus on the first big bit of the fundament, which is the business understanding. So what you really need to know, and you don't need to go and do an MBA, by the way, that's not the point. But you need to understand the business model of the company that you're working for and then you're doing analytics for, etc. And that's very important. And the key elements are, what are we selling? Who are we selling this to? How are we selling it? How do we make money? Like, you know, and what do we spend the money on? These are very basic components. You know, just talk to people and you will know what they are. And they're very important because they also allow you to understand the underlying business processes. And your job is to measure business processes, so you need to know what you're measuring. And you know, they usually generate data points that you then look at, so you need to understand them on the business level, not on the table level or a field level. You need to know what are the steps of that process. They also change and evolve. Who's involved? How the data is generated. Is it manual input? Is it something done automatically? What do these values mean? Which data points are relevant? Because I can probably use 3 different fields to calculate profit. Which one should I use? What data can be ignored? And those are very, very important things to answer. And they will set the stage. Like once you figure that out, it sets the stage for you know, understanding a little bit more about the company and then putting your work into places that matter. And so how you do that? So I've been really, it's astonishing to me how many times I work on data-related projects and people who were looking at the data had no idea what the data that they're looking at means, and that's scary. So don't be that person. Instead, be curious, talk to people. Talk to finance, talk to management if possible, talk to PMs. They will try to help you, or at least they're going to point you in the right direction. Bribe people with cookies, do coffee dates, lunch dates, whatever it takes, just go out and talk and try to learn about people's jobs and how they fit into the big picture. The other thing that you can do, which is very easy, you read that book, and it explains business models, the components, and gives a lot of examples of very popular business models that are out there in the world, and good chances are that your company falls into this, so you can already learn a little bit by reading. It's a really cool book. I would highly recommend. Then moving on to talking to customers. Often, I think the keyword is often is also something that you should be doing repeatedly, not just a one-off, because you need to understand what they do, essentially. And the truth is, people have no clue what they need. They will come to you and they will ask you for things, and they think they know, but 90% of the time they're wrong. And your job is to figure out what actually do they need, and what do they mean when they say, build me a dashboard, give me numbers, give me reports, because no one cares about dashboards, really. No one, I think we already know that. People, they use those numbers not in a vacuum, they use it in a specific context. They need to make a decision, they need the numbers to have available when they're doing a client call. They need to know when they need to reorder stock, things like that. It's not just a static thing that they're going to look at over time and it never changes and whatever. So your job is to figure out what that context is, and your job is to know and not to mindlessly jump on a request when it comes and just take a step back. So how do you do that? There is a little technique called shadowing, and this is probably my favorite tactic, and I used it a lot as a PM, and I used it a lot as a data analyst on projects. And it's very simple. You go and you spend a day with whoever your stakeholder is, and you observe them, you take notes, and you ask questions. You observe them in their working habitat, and then you start being annoying. It's like, hey, why did you do this? What about that? Like, what are you going to do with that? And that, you're going to learn a lot just by observing. It's incredible how much you can learn about people's struggles and problems and what stops them to be good at and successful at their job. And you can spend a day, you can just set up a call and like, okay, can you walk me by through this very particular workflow that you're doing? Ideally record the call, take some notes, follow up, do it regularly, etc. So when you're asking a lot of annoying questions, doing the shadowing, it really matters what questions you're asking and how you're phrasing them. That makes or breaks the feedback and what you're going to learn and what you're going to think that you know about what's needed. Enter the MAM test. This is the single book. If you're going to only read one thing, this is the single book that you should be. In fact, you should be ordering right now as I speak. Please do so. I have a discount code. So it was originally written to help people evaluate their business ideas without building anything. I use it many times. And the advice in it and the insights that you get in it, they apply to overall discovery project perfectly. And the general idea is that you need to avoid fluff, hypotheticals, things in the future. You need to really focus on someone's workflow and the struggles that they have within that workflow, the frequency of the struggle, and whether this is actually a problem, because people love to complain. People love to moan about like, oh, this is so difficult, like I need to do this and that, and then it turns out that it's actually not a problem. Because if you ask them, for instance, why do you bother to solve this, then you can gauge what is actually value of solving that problem. Is this stopping them from, I don't know, securing a client or multiple clients? And when you ask them, what have you tried to solve this so far? And the answer is nothing. That's probably a red flag, and it means that it's not that important. So you don't ask the question, how urgent is this, how important is this? Because in their world, it's super important for them. But when you put it into the context of a company, its goals, objectives, and what we're trying to achieve, etc., like it just might be irrelevant. So you need to be able to gauge those things, and how you ask those questions is really, really important. That book teaches you that. It's super small. You can read it in an afternoon. Very pragmatic, no bullshit. Really, really, really good stuff. Saying no. So there was already said in the panel, what are you going to do with that data? Ola mentioned that. Other tricks like putting responsibility on the, on the stakeholders, to actually own up to the measures and make sure that happens, etc. You're going to see a lot of that similar stuff. I have tricks as well. I gave them names. It's a little bit tricky because a lot of this comes with seniority, and you need to gauge your words well. You need to read the room and know when to say something and when to actually shut up. But there are a few things you can try, and those tricks that have been mentioned before, I believe they come in a sequence. There are 4 of them I'm going to go through. So number 1 is the magic wand. Number 2 is the return. Number 3 is the alt key, and number 4 is Russell Crowe. Yes, the Russell Crowe. So the trick is that you never say no to people. Saying no is actually a big no-no because it's very unproductive. It will give you a label of a troublemaker. Trust me, I've been there many times. Or you're going to be, oh, you're difficult, blah, blah, blah. So you need to actually steer the conversation in a way that the person that you're talking to starts thinking about what they're asking, and they say, hey, actually, you know what, this is not a good idea. Let's just not do it. They need to think that it's coming from them, not from you. And that's very, very difficult. It takes practice, but you can start practicing immediately. So the magic wand. If I had a magic wand and do whatever you ask me to do, and I give it to you now, what would you do with it? You always lead with that. or some sort of form of it. And you'd be surprised how often people just don't have a good answer to it. They just don't know. They was like, oh, actually, I don't know, I just want to know. I was like, oh, why do you want to know? I was like, no, I don't know. I just want to know, I'm curious. And if they don't know, like, so it's only fair to and reasonable to ask them, like, okay, maybe you know what, you can think about it a little bit more, and we can sit down together and think about it. And then once, we know what we're going to do with this, then we can start devising a solution. Otherwise, let's just not waste energy. This is a very, very fair thing to do. The second thing is the return. And just because someone knows what to do with the thing that you're going to give them doesn't mean it's a good idea to do. You still need to figure out whether you're actually solving a problem, someone's inconvenience, or just in pure whim, which is the worst thing in the world, because huge waste of time. And so you do that by returning the serve, and by starting being annoying again and asking follow-up questions. And now start playing tennis, because it's a discovery process. It's very healthy, and it's friendly, and you're all playing for the same team, even though we're playing against each other. And so this is where the questions from the MAM test will shine. This is where you actually know how to structure the questions about the request. Will really, really help you to get to what you need to know. And then 4 things can happen here. Thing number 1 is you discover that it's actually a useful thing to do, and you should be doing, so fantastic, now we have something valuable to do. Number 2 is the person, just disengages or like thinks through the process and says, actually, this is not a good idea, let's just park it, or maybe we can come back to it later, or whatever. Like, this is also really good, because now you said no, and the person said no, and you don't have to work on something that doesn't make much sense. The third option is that the person disengages completely, because they decided in their head that, well, now I need to answer those questions, like, I can't be bothered, I'm just like, this is not important, like, whatever, like, we don't have to do this, which is also good, because you're not wasting your energy on doing something that doesn't make any sense. Or, 4th option, the person disengages and escalates, so now the request is going to come back from the top. But I do have 2 more tactics that you can use to try and deal with this. The out key. So usually this problems, requests come with attached solution to it. It's just our human nature. We cannot help it. Like, I do this all the time when I ask, say, oh, I just need this. It's, humans, they try to maybe be mindful of their time, and it's like, okay, I'm going to think this through for the person, and, they just ask them to do this and to save their time and energy and whatnot. But it's bad, like, it's just because, business stakeholders don't know what's possible, what isn't possible, what makes sense, so, but they do come with solutions, so we just can't help it. And so the first 2 tricks you use to shift the focus from the solution to the actual problem. You gather some more information, discovery, and then during that discovery, you might find out that actually you can not spend so much time on something. You can maybe build, part of the report that then uncovers the next steps possible, or maybe a data export is good enough because that person knows how to work with the data, and you don't need to build like a whole set of dashboards or reports or include things in the data model and whatnot. So if you can do that, if you can actually propose an alternative solution to whatever the person thinks that you should be doing, it's a win-win for everyone, especially if you can save time on it, if it can be, a smaller effort. And then sometimes you just gotta entertain. Some requests are stupid, and some people just not gonna, they're just not gonna drop it. And if everything fails, you can do these 4 things, right? So agree that you're gonna investigate the request and not actually do it. You say, oh, I need to look into this, let's see if it's possible. Call it discovery, they love it. It still work. And put, time box it. Agree on this, look, I'm gonna spend 2 days on it, not more, okay? And I'm gonna look into possibilities, and I'm gonna come back with options to you. Up front, you need to agree what is going to move that request further based on what you're going to find out. Because if you don't agree up front, I bet your stakeholder is going to move the goalpost. It's like, yes, but. And then you're going to be in this endless cycle of checking things and not doing anything valuable. And then make sure you write it down and send an email that you have a proof of what was agreed on. And you know, that should keep you sweet. So I'm going to wrap up now. How am I doing on time, actually? Okay, it's good. So if you can, you know, find ways to understand the business, if you can really, you know, get your head around it and know what the company is doing and how it makes money. If you know how to talk to your customers, you do it often. You figure out what your stakeholders are actually doing, what are their pain points during the day, what stops them from being successful at their job, what stops the company to move forward and actually, you know, achieve the business goals. And if you learn how to say no to people and keep your plate half full instead of full all the time, and gain that little bit of breathing space so that you can start looking into like different areas and exploring what could be improved in the business, or, you know, they say this is important, this is the strategy, let's have a look. Then in most situations you'll be really well equipped to state the problem well, and when you are able to state the problem well, you will realize that the tools or the technical skills that you need to use to solve the problem are kind of obvious. You don't need to think about it anymore. You just do that last mile. And by the way, 80, if not 90% of the cases, it's going to be SQL and a spreadsheet. Trust me. Like, that's pretty much it. Yeah, you're going to become a really, really good data analyst. And people will want to hire you on the spot instantly and will value you as an employer, and you're going to be happier, hopefully. Thank you.
So thanks, that was really great. We always have this that software engineering is the older kind of topic, and we need to learn on the data engineering side about it. So it absolutely makes sense to do it on the product management side of it. Are there any questions from the audience?
Thanks for the presentation, Alex. Resonated a lot. The question, in the conversations with your stakeholders, when you started like digging into the problem and staying curious about their field, what was the example from your experience that surprised you the most? Like when your own assumptions have been broken?
They have been broken. So like that I assumed that we should not be doing this, and then it turned out that we should be doing this. Actually, it wasn't in a conversation. It was more of a period of time. So like with my current client, that really jumps to me because I'm slowly realizing that we might have, well, not that we made a mistake of what I said we should be doing, but like I'm realizing that actually what we were trying to do at the beginning kind of makes sense. Yeah, we just tried it. We just tried a different route, and then based on the results and the observations of how people are using or struggling to use what I think it will be much simpler, I'm starting to realize that actually the requests that were coming in to improve the product that was essentially built for a client-facing customers, maybe extending functionality there that I just decided not to do would have been a good option. In the conversation, it was probably, I can't recall. I'm always right. No, that's not what I'm trying to say. No, I don't know. I really don't know. I'll think about it and I'll let you know, because I can't recall. Sorry.
Have another one here.
You said you forget about this playbook, I will call it now, and how do we get better at this? So I see all your points. I remember, yeah, I've done the same, like ask the question and then it disappears or it gets forwarded to management. And how can we get better as data product managers, analysts, and get more conscious, not like retro perspectively, oh yeah, we did it wrong again.
So you're probably expecting a shortcut tip or trick. There is none. You just need to practice. You just need to try to do it as much as you can in your working environment. If you manage to carve out time to spend with your stakeholders, if you manage to do the shadowing, and you really do it on a regular basis, you're going to get much more comfortable with it. Because if you're going to hang out with one person and then you're going to ask them the questions, it just has a much more friendly vibe. And if you stay conscious on practicing those, this is how I'm going to phrase the question, etc., not reverting back to the old methods, essentially you're going to become more comfortable doing that on a daily basis with maybe some senior staff or so you just need to try as much as you can. Practice on your friends, I don't know. It's there is no shortcut here. It's how do you get better at this? Those things are difficult to, that's why people usually revert to, this is actually the conversation I had with Luca yesterday, he made a very valid point. People revert to learning technical skills because they're tangible. You do a course in Python and all of a sudden, I know Python, awesome, right? I'm better than I was a month ago. With this stuff, it usually comes from the experience. You have to spend time in different environments, and then you start realizing that that it's just basically those things matter more than if I can do, I don't know, machine learning, Spark, whatever. If you have a manager or you have a head of, etc., it is also if there are any managers or heads of, I think that's important to create an environment at work that supports this and that people have time to go to other departments. They're encouraged. They're actually maybe even forced a little bit. I remember when we were doing Delivery Hero, building stuff, and we were doing logistics, we had to go and do rider shift to test the rider up and understand what's the experience. There is no question, you would have to go, even if you didn't want to, this was, your boss would say, you're going to go a rider shift. That's what you're going to be doing. Or fleet controlling shift, you basically observe orders and see how they come and go and what are the problems, etc. That was mandatory thing. So for all the managers out there, please create an environment that encourages this, because it's so difficult to teach and you only can learn that through experience. The sooner in your career you realize that this is what matters, the quicker you're going to get better at it. And there's just, I wish there was it's just other people's mistakes maybe, and just trying to be, as aware of it as possible.
We have time for one more.
Yeah, so you mentioned that stakeholders often escalate to management, right, when you say no. Do you also have experience with the opposite, where actually you escalate to management, for example, when you have limited resources and you decide on a management level, hey, analytics is going to work on this certain project with management buy-in, and with that buy-in you can say no to other stakeholders?
Yes, I've done that many times. At the very beginning of my career, in a very, very bad way. Telling my boss that the other boss is an idiot, don't do that. Gets you into trouble. So right now I try to avoid it as much as possible because it usually generates attention, and if I can solve something with, directly with the person, that's better. But there is one trick that you can do which is an escalation but a soft one. And so if you go to your boss and say, look, we have all those things that are being asked of us to do, right? We can only do 3 of them. Can you help me pick which ones we should be focusing on? And then your boss tells you that, and then you say, okay, can you now turn around and go to that person and tell them that this is what we're doing? So there is there is no ambiguity about that, and everyone's on the same page. So I would do that, and yes, there were many, many situations where I was kind of forced because we were slammed, and then you try to be reasonable with people, and sometimes people don't want to be reasonable, and you need to do that.